Razz al Ghul, head of the League of Assassins, father of Talia al Ghul, and one of the greatest Batman villains ever made. That sentence might not seem controversial, but right now there are dozens of people typing away,
"That's not how you say his name, it's pronounced Raysh!"
Every single time that I mention Razz al Ghul in a video, I deal with an influx of these comments. But even though they're annoying, I do understand why they think that they're correct, because Batman adaptations haven't been consistent over the years.
I am he who is called Raysh al Ghul.
I am Razz al Ghul.
This is Raysh al Ghul.
My name is Razz al Ghul.
I am Raysh al Ghul.
Razz al Ghul.
I am Raysh al Ghul.
Razz al Ghul. Raysh al Ghul.
Am I pronouncing this right? Mr. Razz al Ghul?
But to be entirely honest, I think the reason that people get so up in arms over the pronunciation is because Batman Beyond tried to end the debate by giving us a definitive answer, but it still managed to be wrong.
Very thorough, Terry. Though father's name was pronounced Raysh, not Razz. A common mistake.
So fine, I'm going to put this debate to sleep once and for all. Mostly because whenever I get one of those misinformed comments, I can just link them to this video. Hello if you're one of those people. But speaking of putting things to sleep, I have been extremely self-conscious about my choice of bed frame for a good while, because I swear to God, this was an actual message that I got from a woman that I dated before I met my wife, and it has haunted me for years. And that is why I love my new Japanese joinery bed frame that I got from the sponsor of today's video, FlexiSpot. I have had to assemble and disassemble so many bed frames, but this one was an absolute breeze, and it felt like I was assembling a wooden puzzle, with each piece nicely fitting into place with a satisfying. These are traditional Japanese interlocking joints, and the end result is something that is extremely quiet and stable. Plus, this is solid rubber wood. It is sturdy and not easily damaged. This is a quality bed frame that is going to last. There is plenty of space underneath for storage, and you can save yourself a trip to one of those furniture warehouses because FlexiSpot bed frames are ready to ship ASAP, with your order getting to your home within 3 to 5 days of you placing it. It's time for you to upgrade your bedroom and try out a FlexiSpot bed frame for yourself. And make sure to use my code DRAKE for an extra $20 off the bed frame and matching accessories. You are going to love the comfort, convenience, and value, because I know I have. But anyway, let's get back to it. Following their iconic run on the Green Lantern and Green Arrow series, comic duo Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams took over the Batman comic, and wanted to elevate the character from his silly Silver Age antics by making him a bit more grounded and realistic. And while yes, they brought back several members of the Caped Crusaders Rogues Gallery, they thought that the best way to show that Batman comics could and should be taken more seriously was to create a brand new villain that was intimidating from the get-go. They mentioned this to their editor Julius Schwartz, who thought that this would be a good idea. And over the weekend, Schwartz came across the name of the star, Algol, located inside of the Perseus constellation, also known as the Demon Star. It got this name because it's a variable star, meaning that its brightness waxes and wanes just like the moon. So ancient observers thought this star was literally disappearing and reappearing in the sky, which massively freaked them out and gave it the association with demons and monsters. And honestly though, it is so much cooler than that, because if you overlay what the constellation is meant to represent, it is Perseus cutting off the head of Medusa. Algol lies right at the center of Medusa's head, and its name comes from what the star is called in Arabic, which, wouldn't you know, is this, Razz al Ghul, the demon's head. When Julius Schwartz came back to the DC offices after the weekend, well, let's hear it straight from Neil Adams' mouth.
And he came in on the following Monday, and he pointed at me and he said, "Razz al Ghul." I said, "Okay, what does that mean?" He said, "It's a name. It means the head of the demon." I said, "Okay, why are you saying that to me?" He said, "Because that's your Moriarty." Well, listen to that. The creator of Razz al Ghul pronounces it as Razz al Ghul. For some people, that would be the end of the argument. However, I like to be as thorough as I can possibly be. So did Julius Schwartz actually have the right pronunciation when he brought this to Neil Adams and Denny O'Neil? To confirm this, I did one of the most awkward things of my entire YouTube career. So here in Dallas, there's an Arabic school that is 5 minutes down the road from a card shop that I go to on a regular basis. So I figured that I could kill 2 birds with 1 stone. I could write off the mileage to the card shop, and I could verify the pronunciation with native Arabic speakers. However,
I had not considered just how weird it would be for a random white guy to show up to an Arabic school with the phrase "head of the demon" written on a piece of paper and then asking to record people saying it. But thankfully, I was able to explain the entire situation and tell them about the other strange encounters that I've had for this channel, like when I sat down with a diamond expert to help me calculate the cost of Emma Frost's diamond form. So, one of the teachers agreed to read this for me, and she says, "But if that is somehow not enough for you, then let me further prove that his name was always meant to be pronounced as Razz. Take a look at the accent marks above the A and U in his first appearance. Those are called macrons, and they indicate that a letter should have a long pronunciation, and you've probably seen them around. Rama, Shogun, Maori. So a macron above the A and the U would give us Razz al Ghul. Now, I will admit that the macrons have been removed in later appearances, but I don't think that means that DC is trying to get us to not pronounce Razz al Ghul as Razz al Ghul, because macrons tend to get removed in a lot of foreign words once they're more well known to the English-speaking public, like Shogun, for instance. It kind of reminds me of when I was reading this older comic called Usagi Yojimbo, which had to call out that the word sensei means teacher in Japanese because it's not a word that the average reader would have been familiar with back in the 80s when it was published. So for me personally, yeah, I am going to stick with Razz al Ghul, the pronunciation that's the closest to both the original Arabic and how Neil Adams and Julius Schwartz have said it, which again is 2 out of his 3 creators. Okay, but what about the third guy, Denny O'Neil? Well, he seems to have a couple of pronunciations. Here's a clip to explain what I mean.
I think Razz al Ghul came as much as anything from my being bored with doing the same thing. As to the pronunciation, my daughter asked her language teacher at UCLA, and he said Raysh al Ghul.
I don't know if you caught that, but Denny O'Neil wasn't consistent in this interview. He started off by saying
Razz al Ghul,
but then he switched over to
Raysh al Ghul.
Now, if you're asking me, that sounds less like someone who has always said Raysh and more like someone whose pronunciation has evolved over time after being corrected by an expert. And I mean, look, I get it. When you say something a certain way for years, it's hard to fully switch when you're corrected. There are some old videos where I called this guy Thanos before his name was ever spoken in the MCU. But either way, it doesn't matter what Denny used to say because he now pronounces it as Raysh. But that still begs the question. If the Arabic pronunciation is so cut and dry, then where the hell did Raysh come from in the first place? How would this UCLA professor possibly come to that pronunciation? Well, for that, I would like to play you this clip from a video that DK Larations made back when he was working for NerdSync.
This story would seem a bit suspect until you consider the close similarity Razz has to a Hebrew word, also meaning head, Rosh, and also how likely it is that the writers had a greater familiarity with the Hebrew language than they did Arabic. But how does Rosh get to Raysh? Well, the 20th letter of the Hebrew alphabet, Raysh, is pronounced this way. It looks like this, and is a Hebrew cognate of the Arabic letter Ra. Raysh is connected to the word Rosh, not only because Rosh starts with a Raysh, but also the letter Raysh is meant to physically represent a bowed head. It seems then that the Arabic word Razz was substituted for the more familiar and easier to pronounce Hebrew form, because the Arabic word reminded them of it.
Regardless of how Denny O'Neil arrived at his preferred pronunciation, what's undeniable is that in 1993, he wrote Razz al Ghul's first ever appearance outside of the comics in Batman the Animated Series for the episode The Demon's Quest, which adapted his own story from the comics where Razz al Ghul was introduced. Because he was the writer of this episode, it's obvious that they went with his pronunciation. I mean, after all, why would you possibly disagree with the character's creator on the pronunciation of his own work? And now, I have a sneaking suspicion that because this episode of the cartoon says Raysh, that is the reason why so many other adaptations are using it as well. But that actually leads to an interesting question. Yes, I think we've really proven that Raysh is incorrect, but does that even matter anymore? Having looked over every movie, show, and video game that Razz has ever been in, there are more instances of Raysh than Razz.
Raysh. 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 Raysh al Ghul.
Let's compare this to the word forte, as in linguistics are not my forte. Technically, that word should be pronounced fort, or more accurately, in a French accent with that weird R sound that I can never properly get down.
Forte.
Forte.
Forte. Forte.
Forte. That word is widely pronounced as forte in English, and even though it is wrong, people would think that I'm an idiot if I said cooking stromboli is not my fort. And dude, imagine if I could actually manage to pronounce it in French. I would look so damn pretentious if I said that. Now, I am married to a woman from Mexico, and we're in the process of moving back there, so I'm actively trying to speak Spanish more often. So now, for most Spanish words, like for instance, Mexico, I have to consciously make sure that I am pronouncing them like an American because so many English speakers get really annoyed when I say Mexico. However, I am an obnoxious and pretentious know-it-all, and even though it would get plenty of people off my back, I just can't bring myself to make the switch over to Raysh al Ghul. I'm going to keep on saying Razz in my videos, and there is not a goddamn thing you can do to stop me. Just be glad I'm not saying Razz al Ghul. But anyway, if you like this video, then by all means, please like the video. And if you want more Batman goodness, well, good news for you. I have an entire playlist of all of my Batman videos, so feel free to give that a click and watch some more. But anyway, hopefully you learned at least a little something new, and hopefully, I'll see you next time.